I'm Cherry Jones, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Ann and Damien.
Hi, folks, and welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From.
With Ann and Damien.
We're here, we're back, we're so excited to chat with you. Apologies for the intern. She's in the back. She just got a new toy, and she's so excited. She is a munch, munch, crunch, crunch in the background. But thank you for joining us. It's so good to be back. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Damien. It's so good to see you. You were just with your family this weekend. How was it?
With my family. It was lovely, and I was working on... Well, I wasn't working on this, but I was watching with my mother and niece Tick, Tick, Boom, the musical starring Andrew Garfield and Vanessa Hudgens. And I asked my niece if she knew Vanessa Hudgens, and she said she impersonated her during like her COVID COVID speech.
Yeah.
It's a crazy, crazy time.
I love that your sister knew that.
My niece.
Your niece. I was like,
My
your
niece.
sister knew that? That's niche.
My niece.
Okay, bless.
But anyway, so we watched Tick, Tick, Boom, which I had already seen, but was so lovely. And I was like geeking out, and I was like explaining, like, these are all theater legends. Like, this is Cheetah Rivera, in case you don't recognize her. And this is Mom, you know Bernadette Peters. But like, these are the women from Hamilton. I don't know that they're legends, but like, they're important. And I was like going through, and I felt like I was sort of doing a show for myself, but then I was just thinking about like Rent, which I like cared about and then kind of hated, like, and now I'm like I don't know if I'm entirely back on board in terms of it being like a great musical, but it's like, you know, revolutionary.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking about like, okay, I have to go back and read Sarah Schulman's book where she alleges that the characters or like the storylines of Rent were pulled from, perhaps, for the book of Rent, and that book is People in Trouble. So then I bought People in Trouble, and it is being mailed to me. And then I was like, okay, so I'm gonna like make 2025 a year where I like do a deep dive on Rent and like connect all of the dots, like read all of the different versions of the history of Rent, so that like it's not just who's the composer,
Jonathan Larson.
I'm sorry, Jonathan Larson, Michael Grafe.
Yeah, Michael Grafe directed.
Michael Grafe directed. Jonathan Larson is the writer. Anyway, like connecting all parts, so it's not just like the reverence we have for Jonathan Larson or like this important like groundbreaking rock pop musical, but also like how did it get there? Who were these characters really based on? But also, like, were they stolen from someone? Like, I need all sides of the history. And then I was like, okay, I also want to do this for Gypsy because I just saw Gypsy, which Anne hasn't yet seen, so we cannot discuss yet on the record. But I just saw it. It's the first time I've ever seen it. And of course, me and Anne love all of the different Gypsy, like watching the clips. So I was like, okay, I need to go back and read Gypsy Rose Lee's memoir.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to read Arthur Lawrence's book about writing Gypsy and like then Sondheim's book so that I can put all those pieces together.
And I think the thing that I have read those, but I haven't read June Havoc's book. And she has two, and they're out of print and kind of expensive to buy. So I'm like, I think I just have to bite the bullet and buy them because it feels important for us.
It'll be an investment because I think so. I think like, okay, so this is like my short list for all connecting the gay dots, as I'm going to call it now. I'm coining this is the project now.
Yeah, we've copywritten it.
Is connecting the dots for Sunset Boulevard as discussed on the Patreon. We break down our review of Sunset Boulevard, but like I rewatched the movie recently, and then I also purchased a book. I will put it in the show notes that was recommended by our friend Nick. That's like some weird like it's like a booklet that someone put together with like all this. Basically, it sounds like theater chat room gossip about the original production.
God bless these people doing God's work.
So doing Sunset Boulevard, Rent, and Gypsy. I think those are the three pieces that I am ready to like dig as deep as I humanly can. I've never seen Rosalind Russell's version of Gypsy. Like I need to watch that, and then I think I should rewatch Bette Midler's version, even though I have seen that and it was bad.
I think we should have a small gathering where we watch the Bette Midler Gypsy, and maybe we could open it up. I don't know if we can do that online, but I feel like maybe we should have a Bette Midler watch party where we watch that insane version and then we close with her Emmy performance of
the
Rose's
Emmy
turn.
performance. I mean, and the movie is better than the Emmy performance. Yes. It's almost as if she didn't know that she was like, it's like as if she didn't already perform the song in character in the film, so therefore had no context for what it's about. Like, it's interesting that she was able to say, like, you know what, I'm throwing it all away.
Yeah. It's really too, like, doing it for an Emmy audience makes zero sense, especially since, like, most of those people have no idea what Gypsy is or any backstory. And it's like, you're wearing this blue crushed velvet, like, tunic over
Yeah, it's like a two. It's
over
a two-piece
leggings.
It's like a two-piece. It has. Remember like when pants? My great Aunt Midge used to always wear them like stirrups. I feel
stirrup
like
pants. Yes,
my Aunt Midge used to wear her
They may have
stirrup
had,
pants
like,
over her shoe, and we
Yes.
all used to love it. Like she would like wear them like she was a cowboy.
Oh, that's.
Do you know what I mean? Like over the.
Maybe
over
that's
the,
my spring look. I did love stirrup pants as a kid. I feel like it's time to bring them back. But I think that we should, because we are, I think, historians of a certain ilk, and this is homework, but it's homework that is a total pleasure.
Totally.
So if you are like us and you want to join in on this, maybe we will put together sort of our syllabus for, let's call it the winter spring semester, that includes, as you said, Sunset Boulevard, Rent, and Gypsy.
May I add one more piece to this?
Of course.
I also rewatched Chicago with my mother, and then I did a deep dive of like, I was like, this is based on a play, right? I knew, and I was like, it's based on real people, but like, I forget like how much of it is invented and how much is real. So then I dug into like reading about the play, and I was like, oh, like Liz, who's one of the Merry Murderesses, like she is a character that's in the real play. That, and like, so the Roxy and Velma are based on real women.
Roxy Hart was the play, or it was like a short story, was
The
it?
play is called Chicago, and Roxy and Velma are characters in it, and
see.
they're based on real women who
we gotta
murdered-
get that.
who-
We gotta get it.
So then I was like, okay, I'm into this, and then I was like reading about like how the playwright didn't want to give Fosse the rights, and then she died, and the estate sold the rights. And I was like, honestly, if that happened present day, we would say that's fucked up. But
Yeah.
because it's like Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon did it,
Right, and thank God we have access.
yeah, like,
to
but we would
this.
be like, this is so fucked up. They went against so and so's rights. It's like how the estate of SpongeBob like sold his like life away to Nickelodeon, even though he was like, please don't make this show like go beyond me. And then they were like, but then like he died and his estate just sold everything to. So then it's like a musical and like.
Oh
an
my
musical.
God, I did not know any
Right,
of
but you're
this.
offended by that, but you
Yes.
love Chicago.
I love Chicago.
So I just
And
thought it
let's-
was interesting, and I was like, I need to connect all the dots of Chicago as well.
I love this. And we're going to start with the source material. We're going to put a syllabus together for any of you dorks that are with us. Please come enjoy this sort of deep dive into musical theater history. I have to say, Tick, Tick, Boom was my entry point to Raul Esparza, who I loved as a teenager. And that album was really important to me. And I had very low expectations for the film adaptation starring Andrew Garfield, directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. But I have to say, I thought it was excellent. Did it hold up for you when you rewatched it? I watched it like the week, I had scheduled, like appointment scheduled with my in-law family to watch it like over the week of Thanksgiving, I think. And then Stephen Sondheim, did he die on Thanksgiving? It was like the day after. It was like basically Sondheim died and we had already made the appointment to like schedule and watch it together as a family.
Yeah, so it was like extra emotional.
Yeah, so I have never revisited it, so I can't really look at it with clear, open eyes, but I remember thinking this is so much better, and I felt like one of the things I dislike about a lot of biopics, I also just saw A Complete Unknown this weekend that I would like you to see so we can talk about it, but something that I think is difficult in a biopic is translating like the art of creation onto film, and how do you make it dynamic, and how do you make it interesting, and how do you make it feel like, wow, this person's creating something that is going to last a lifetime and it is groundbreaking. I thought that swimming pool scene with the staffs and the way that it was superimposed over the swimming, that's my memory of it, was like really beautifully done.
I was worried, so we started watching it, and it was again my mom and my niece who like theater but aren't like theater people,
Right?
And I think I was like, oh, is this gonna not hold up, at least in like this audience?
Yeah.
And then that, what is it, Boho Days, is that the name of the song? Like, this is a life, anyway, and it's like he's like clapping, and then everyone's like participating, and
Yeah.
it's like kind of like there's no music initially, and I like looked at my mom and niece and I was like, isn't this fun? And then anyway, so then we finished watching.
Did they agree, or were
and
they
I thought my
horrified?
niece was sleeping. She was like under a blanket, and then afterwards they both said they loved it, and I was so
Aw.
charmed by that. And I was like, so yeah, to answer your question, I did feel like it held up, and I felt like I just think it's like really sweet, and obviously it's very pleasing to like a musical theater nerd. And then I like forgot Lin-Manuel directed it, and I was like kind of annoyed because I was like, I think it's well directed.
I agree, and though I do have grievances or quibbles with him, he does seem to be a good neighbor of Washington Heights and does a lot of good work with his foundation, and I feel like his like dedication to continuing to do theater and promote the theater is a beautiful thing.
I felt like I was not a person who like knew Tick, Tick, Boom. Like I know you and our friend Jeremy were like big fans as young people. I was not, and I felt like he filled in a lot of story that necessarily wasn't there, and like built he like used Jonathan Larson's like real life to fill out stuff that like, and so connecting those dots and like making Sunday in the Park. I don't know again how much of this is like in the show, but that's the fact that Sunday in the Park with George is like a piece of work that inspires Jonathan Larson. So he's like watching it, and him and like Robin De Jesus are like roommates and watching it. And then later on, when she's in the like dream sequence where he's like imagining, you know, it's like Sunday brunch and she's there, I was like he has so much he as in Lin-Manuel has like so much reverence for the theater in a way that like, you know, just like I'm like have goosebumps. Anyway, so join us on the connecting the gay dots of a year. I also am going to say that have requested that Anne make me a syllabus of like Judy Garland, because Anne is such a scholar and I feel like I'd say I know like above average for a gay person about Judy, Liza, Lorna, like the dynasty.
Definitely above average.
But I think that like there are so many people who know so much more, and Anne knows a lot, and so I need to fill all those blind spots. So like I want this podcast and also the Patreon to be a place where we can do these things together. So like send us a message if you're ready to help connect the dots, and maybe we can set up some, you know, New York meetups or some Zoom meetups or both, where we can watch some of this stuff together and talk about it, because I really like having like these are the kind of book clubs I want to have, you know?
Completely. And if you don't know what the podcast is, it is Damien and I, best friends, queer historians, queer weirdos, interviewing character actresses every episode, shooting the shit with each other on either side of that. So welcome to the show. This month's episode is so tied into what we were just discussing in terms of connecting the dots of gay history, theatrical history, New York history. We got to sit down in the apartment of none other than New York theater, I'm going to say royalty, Cherry Jones. And we get into so much queer history. She showed us so much of her sort of like queer theatrical memorabilia around her apartment.
So cool.
And I just feel like Cherry Jones is a very big part of this sort of like queer theatrical tradition, that part of the mission of this podcast and part of this sort of winter spring semester that we're putting together right now is about making sure that gay history doesn't get lost. And I know that sounds very grandiose, and not that we need to pat ourselves on the back about it, but part of this is making sure that like future generations and young queer people know the important queer art of the past at least half century. And we're looking into the early 1900s as well. So we're getting to the 100-year mark when we're talking about Ligy, which, yes, we do get into with none other than Cherry Jones. We hope you enjoy this episode.
You might know her from The Handmaid's Tale,
24,
Transparent,
Succession,
The West Wing,
The Village,
The Eyes of Tammy Faye,
and her numerous theater credits including The Heiress,
Doubt,
Mrs. Warren's Profession,
and The Glass Menagerie. It's a big day for us here at You Might Know Her From, because we're here with 3-time Emmy winner and 2-time Tony winner, Cherry Jones. Cherry Jones, thank you so much for being with us and having us in your home.
It is my great pleasure. It gave me a reason to clean up.
It's always the only time I ever am straight. I'm always
Truly.
running around for company. Cherry, you're really one of the last great women of the theater. But I think for our listeners...
That's a little bit of an overstatement, Damien.
I don't know. I mean,
I
name
don't know. We don't
someone
really-
else. Name
we like
someone
to-
else
we-
that does what you do.
Well, and it's been a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I got to work on a play this summer, but I can't wait to do more plays. It's just you get to a certain age, and there's more film now,
Yeah.
and television for old actresses,
Yeah.
than plays. You know,
That's interesting.
It's an interesting
Yeah.
point that I never, I guess, really thought about.
Yeah.
There's more roles now in film and TV. There's also just like more things, right? Because there's content as we call it, like everywhere. But so for like you of course are a great woman of the theater, but also have popped up in many buzzy shows, things that our listeners would know. Here's a little laundry list: 24, The Handmaid's Tale, and Succession, each of which you have won a Emmy for. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But also The West Wing, Black Mirror, Transparent, Defending Jacob, and Poker Face, to name a few.
and 5 days at Memorial, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing that few people seem to know about.
Where is that? Where is that? Where can we watch that?
Apple
TV? Okay.
And it was taken from Sherry Fink's Pulitzer Prize winning. Well, she did a long article for ProPublica that won the Pulitzer, and then she turned it into a book. Mm-hmm. And it's about a hospital in New Orleans, Memorial Baptist, that once the levees failed, you know, and everything was under 10 feet of water, it's what happens in that hospital and how quickly things broke down. And there several nurses, of course it was the nurses, were charged with euthanizing. And which I remember. Seeing the article in the New York Times the day that broke. But it's a gorgeous. It's about, I guess, maybe 10 parts, and it's really John Ridley and Carlton Cuse wrote it, and it's really, really good.
So this is a blind spot for us only just because I feel like Apple has so much great programming that they are not promoting in the right way, and I feel like they need to get it pushed out because we should have been watching it. So
it didn't get, for some reason, it didn't get buzz.
Yeah.
And it got sort of buried because it was after COVID when there was, you know, everybody was...
Well, this is everyone, including us. Our homework is now to catch up.
Yeah.
So they've announced that there is going to be a 6th and final season of The Handmaid's Tale. You were on the show. You play Elizabeth Moss's mother, Holly Maddox. It's sort of a mystery about what happens to your character. Can you reveal anything? Do you know if you're going to be in the final season? Have you done anything? Can you tell us anything here today?
No.
No, you're not in it. No, you can't tell us anything.
It's a no. Okay, got it.
Okay. Thank you for humoring us. We hope we see you.
I hope I didn't clarify anything.
You clarified nothing at all. You left it totally vague.
I love a mystery.
Okay, so obviously you went toe-to-toe with the Roy family on Succession. Your character, Nan Pierce, is this very like old money owner of the rival media organization that Logan Roy wants to buy. We loved that show. I mean, I think everyone loved that show. It seems like a play on film.
Totally.
What was the dynamic on that set like when you're popping into this very intense recurring cast that has a very clear dynamic? Like, was it difficult? Did you have natural chemistry with them? Like, were you a cog in a well-oiled machine? They obviously knew that you could go like toe-to-toe with Brian Cox. But like, what was it like stepping into that?
Oh my gosh. Well, you can imagine I was a little concerned about that.
Yeah. He seems so scary, and I know he like cultivates it. So talented, so brilliant, but just
Brian?
yeah.
He's an old lion.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he treated me, I think because I'm from the theater. Yeah. He treated me like a queen. He really did. And the great thing about that cast is I knew half of them already.
Right.
David Rashi had played his wife a couple of times, and I've known Jay Smith Cameron forever.
Yeah, y'all are buddies, right?
And she was so magnificent on that show.
So good.
And I had not known Jeremy Strong before, or Sarah, or Kieran, but they were, you know, just this. They were all so happy.
Yeah.
You know, so they were so welcoming, and we had a blast. And I think I got the job. Maybe Frank Rich might have suggested me. I'm not 100% sure. And
what an interesting dynamic to go from critic to then, you know. I mean, you got good reviews from Frank Rich.
Well, he actually, I only was reviewed once by him for Baltimore Waltz because he was transitioning out to the op-ed page.
Okay.
Right. But he wrote me and wanted to know if I had any questions or anything, and I wrote him back and I said, she's sort of a wannabe Catherine Graham, and he said she's the bus and truck Catherine Graham.
Oh, I like that. Compliment.
Yeah, which helped me.
Yeah,
you know. And but then just sitting in that, we were in this mansion on Long Island, and just sitting there, all of us in a circle, telling stories. And Brian told a few stories about teaching in Russia, but it was an amazing little run I got to do with them.
It's such an incredible show, which like I think is a popular opinion, but it really just is everything that I watched it sort of late to the game, and it's so great. And also you're buddies with Holly Hunter, and you guys got to have a little bit of.
I left out Holly.
You guys got to do business together too, which was cool.
I went to school with Holly, and at one point when they all land in the helicopter, Holly, we rode back in my Wagoneer back to the house, and Holly and I were in this. I said, Holly, do you think this late model That's old, right? Late model?
Yeah.
It always has
Actually,
like
I don't know, but it sounds like
latest
it is.
model.
Yeah.
I've never been sure. It's sort of like wind direction. Is it so? If it's coming, if it's southeast,
Is it
but
coming from there or going there?
there? And I tend to think it's coming from there because then the arrow is. Anyway, who knows? We were in this station wagon, and I said, Holly, I think this was minted the year we met at college. It was like a 1976 Wagoneer or something.
I loved her pop. I mean, that was the beauty of that show, is all of these amazing actors popping up and sort
Yeah.
of like, ping ponging back and forth. Something else that is interesting in your film and TV work is that you were President Allison Taylor on 24 and was a big fan. Sadly, I didn't really watch it at the time, but it seems really like atypical to the rest of your film and TV work. Like, how do you ground that work, which you did and won an Emmy for, and like bring gravitas to like such a wildly like violent genre of TV?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a little trouble with that wildly violent.
Yeah.
But it was a miracle to me because I had just finished the after the Broadway run of Doubt. I had done a 23-city national tour.
We love you for that, by the way. Nobody,
Yes.
nobody
No one
tours
does
the
it anymore.
provinces.
I know, and there's a reason for that.
Would you do it again?
Not the way I did it the
Okay.
last time. Because, they would put us in these, we were in the Fox in St. Louis, which was like a 4,500, the Benedum Center in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
4,500 seat. We were like a little matchbox.
Right.
We would sort of, I'm the one who's speaking kind of thing.
yeah.
And one night we were in St. Louis, and it was the only time I never miss shows. I do not miss shows, but I'd gotten some wretched, terrible thing. I apparently had. I won't go into it. I came so close to going into it, but I think the doctor described something in my nose the size of a cauliflower, is what I remember.
I'm
Anyway,
interested in it. I'm going to be
Yeah, we
honest.
like. Yeah.
Well, I was sick as a dog, and when I came back, I come back into the show after 2 performances off, and it was great because my understudy had worked at the St. Louis Rep, so all of her friends were there, so she
Yeah,
got to
that's sweet.
perform for her friends. Anyway, I came back into it, and I'm in the wings at my desk, and Chris McGarry is delivering the homily at the top of the show, and the opening line is, "What do you do when you're not sure?" And from where I was seated, all I could hear was, what do you do when you're not sure. It was such a huge house. Wow. And the shock jocks of St. Louis had told people not to come because it was anti-Catholic. It was blasphemy.
This is really depressing for my home state. Very St. Louis. Very St. Louis vibes.
And they didn't come.
Oh,
This
Jesus.
is the best. Our last night there was the Academy Awards. That's a hard thing to come up against.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly windy. And there was a batten up on top of the fly roof. They were repairing the fly roof. And the wind was so high. It was a huge piece of timber holding the tarp down. Mm-hmm. And the wind got so high that it was lifting up the log and banging it, so you would just hear these booms, coming from ahead. And we performed that night in a 45-seat house for 400 people.
Oh, my God.
So when I say there's a reason why plays don't go out on the road
That's
a lot,
fair.
they put us in places that we should not be.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. But we did well in other places.
Yeah.
They loved us in Minneapolis.
Okay, good.
We
Well,
were
I'm sorry
small-
to. St. Louis is a Catholic town. It's a. Oof, that's depressing.
But you had just come off the tour of Doubt.
yes,
and
how
you
I
went,
digress.
No. I mean,
No,
this
we
is
love
what,
a digression.
This is what we want.
We want the stories. Yeah.
And my parents were both in steeply declining health. And I got flown out to Hollywood to meet the producers of 24. And I always said it was just a lateral move from Sister Aloysius to the President of the United States. And I remember I met with them, and then I got back in the car that they had sent to take me to the hotel, and we're flying down the freeway, and my agent called and said, "Well, Madam President," and all I could think of was, if I come to Hollywood to do this thing, I'm going to have to get a car and I'm going to have to drive on this freeway. And I almost said no.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I said yes, because it was an amazing experience and the crew was unbelievable on that show. And they treated me with deference as the president. They made me feel, presidential. And the miracle was that my mother had a very bad stroke right as the writer's strike began in 2000.
What,
that
2008.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I got the job was because everyone was so sure Hillary was going to win.
They're like, we're really going to have our finger on the pulse here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that she would, and I was able to. The strike happened, and I was able to be with my mother for 4 months after her big stroke. And I was able, because of 24, because they would shoot 2 episodes at a time, they'd shoot everybody out in their locations, and mine was the Oval Office, so I usually got to go first. And then I would get to go home for 2 weeks every month to Tennessee. So I got to be with my parents for the last 3 years of their lives, 2 weeks every month. And then there was another reason the show had to stop at one point, and my mother had another big stroke, and I got to go home and be with her to the end of her life and bury my mama, and then I went back to work. But for that show, I would.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the theater. You do 8 a week.
Right,
and
you're on a tour and you're out you're not at home,
Yeah.
and this gave you consistent schedule and gig, right?
Yeah, and most of my life I'd been in a theater 8 days a week, so I missed so much time with my parents. So
That's beautiful.
I got to go join my beloved sister at home and be there.
I'm so glad. That is a blessing. And of all the things Jack Bauer in 24 gifted us, that's really...
My mother and my sister, of course, wouldn't even watch it.
It was insane. I don't know why I got onto it. Like, it was good and not good. You know, it was like very distressing, and, you know, they got you with each episode being a cliffhanger, and it was of its time, but there was so much of it that was so racist and so post 2001 that was... But I watched it. I don't know how to reconcile that. And you were excellent in it, and there were some really great performances.
Well, and the irony of that is that the largest demographic for that show was black men, because their first president was a black man, and he was the president
Dennis
for the first several
Haysbert.
series.
He was very good
He
too.
was he was
Yeah.
incredible,
Yeah.
Dennis Haysbert.
Yeah, he's very
You
good.
know, so it
Yeah.
it was
It's both
it was-
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be both. And the other thing I wanted to ask you that you mentioned, and we're going to get into like your oeuvre of theater roles, is that you said how it was a lateral move from Sister Aloysius to President Taylor. You play strong women, right? You're saying that you went to the set and the crew was deferential to you in a way because you were cast as the Madam President.
Yeah.
Is there ever a part of Cherry Jones where you're like, I want to be like cast as like dumb or weak, or like because you were so often thought of as police officer, detective, governor, mayor, president?
I'm trying to think. Surely I've played.
I'm sure you have.
Weak. Well, and Amanda Wingfield is neither dumb nor weak, but
Yeah.
she wasn't sort of my usual.
Yeah.
And so I never wanted to do that play. In fact, when I grew out of my Laura age, no one ever cast me as Laura. Maybe for that reason. But John Tiffany he said, read it once. I'll get a cast together, read it once, and if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And I said, okay. And so I sat down with this beautiful cast, and I read it, and I suddenly thought, oh, I know this woman so well, because I'm from Paris, Tennessee, which is about, as the crow flies, about an hour and a half north of Blue Mountain. And I thought, well, because so many women who've done it and done it beautifully aren't from the South.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're cheating if you play Amanda Wingfield and you
that's
actually
interesting.
are
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
South. Yeah.
I had the pleasure to go and actually watch at the Performing Arts Library, you know, number one, the Heiress, which we will get to, but also followed by the Glass Menagerie. So it was so amazing to back, day to day, get to see you, however many years apart that would have been, like 10 years.
No.
Oh, no.
No,
15.
more, right?
It was
The Heiress was 95, 2013.
Yeah.
So
a few years then.
Yeah, but
Like
it was
30.
it was so fascinating to watch that. And as I was watching sort of your physical and vocal work in both of those, I was wondering, if you approach character for yourself in the same way every time, or does the work dictate how you enter into a role? Are you outside in? Do you not subscribe to that? Can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Well, I think when I was doing earlier work, I would, like Night of the Iguana or the Heiress, I always, especially if I was intimidated by a role, like Hannah Jackson in Night of the Iguana, I would sort of work physically first, just try to get the posture, and because that affects how you breathe, it affects everything and how you move through the world. But I saw her as someone who had beautiful posture, and I sort of built this physical home for her, and then hope she'd show up, because but now, I mean, television and film is so different,
Right.
And I'm but I just did Grapes of Wrath, and again, I had to think about how that woman would carry herself, and I was daunted by that one,
Yeah.
and so I sort of maybe started from the outside in.
Yeah.
But I don't even know. It's so funny. I love people who can talk about the process.
Does it depend on the text? Is it the
Yeah.
actors, the director? It depends on so many
It
different things.
Depends on, yeah.
You don't have a rigid way of working.
No, I
Okay.
don't. But what I love about the theater is you get to refine it and refine it and refine it, and through that, all sorts of background things start coming in. When I was doing Doubt, I started because I would always trundle on in the office after the priest's homily, and I would get there early, and I would write a letter prayer to the Virgin Mary, and I would tell her, I would ask for prayers for whatever was going on, literally in reality, and then work it into an errant priest, and that I needed help shepherding my flock, and then I would sit and remember the moment, because Shanley only gives poor Sister Aloysius one line. The priest says, "What did you see?" And all he gives Aloysius is, "I saw you touch William London's hand, and I saw him pull away." And so I had to come up with that. So sitting in the dark every night, it grew and grew and grew in my mind to where I could see the day. It was a cloudy day. There was a storm coming. All the mothers were there in their bouffants and their cat glasses waiting for the kids to get out of school. And of course, Aloysius knew every child's name in that school. And across the playground, there were like dust devils blowing. It was really, really ferociously blowing wind. And I could see the priest coming across the playground. And I see William London, who has some fool's cap in his hand of a painting he'd made or something. And it flies out of his hand. And the priest stops it with his foot. And William London runs across to him. And he had on a watch that his uncle had, a cracked crystal. It was an old watch that his uncle had given him that he'd worn in World War II. And so William, I could see him showing the watch to Father Flynn. But Flynn was blocking my view, but I could see him reaching to look at the watch. I couldn't see the touch, but what I saw was the way William pulled away from this man he idolized, and then looking disturbed and sort of backing away and running to his mom. And of course, I just made all that up, but I had to know what she saw.
The moment before, it says,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. I feel like that was an actor's secret, and it's very, very, I really appreciate that. But yes, that's amazing.
So we're going to go back a little bit to your starring role as Catherine in the 95 revival that we mentioned of The Heiress. This is, of course, the adaptation of the Henry James novel, Washington Square, which was written by Ruth and Augustus Getz. So I was not in New York at the time of the production. I had not seen it. I went to the Performing Arts Library. I requested access to watch it. They said, you need permission from someone to see this production. Whereas I got access to the Glass Menagerie very quickly. I said, okay, great. I'll email Judy. So I had to email Judy Getz-Singer, who is, of course, the daughter of the playwrights and I guess has the rights to the estate. So I just wanted to pass on that I did get permission to see it. Judy sent me back a really lovely email, and she wanted to tell me this. She says, quote, I'm fairly sure Jerry Gutierrez was quite tough on Cherry, but always so admiring and proud of what she was delivering. I do remember the evening he said, well, today we got her a Tony. Broadway history sort of likes to say that the Heiress was a star-making turn for you. Mm-hmm. Did it feel that way at the time? And how do you look back on that?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'd been at the American Repertory Theater for 10 years doing rep.
Yeah.
And by the time I got, and I'd been doing theater in New York for a while. And so I was like 39 or 40, and the reviews were like, who is this marvelous young actress? You know?
Right.
And so, I mean, that was part of it. Nobody knew me, and I just popped up out of a weed patch or something. And it was the first time dealing with the national press and, you know, being... and it was fun. It was really fun, and I adored Jerry Gutierrez, and he wasn't tough on me. He was the funniest person. We all worshipped him, and he would make us go out. It had a curtain. That show had a curtain.
Yeah.
And so the entire cast, I remember on opening night, were made to go and stand at the curtain facing the audience and pretend to pee on it. That was, I mean, I don't even know why. He basically wanted to keep that up every night. I think we did for quite a while. It gave us a chance to all see each other on the stage before we went on. But I remember one of my favorite directions he gave me. I'd been doing it for weeks, months at that point. And he came backstage, and I was sure I was keeping it so pure, so unadorned. You know, I just wanted to keep it simple. And he came backstage, and he said, Cherry, you know, when you say, let us have some lemonade to Aunt Penniman? I said, yeah. He said, it sounds like you have Barbara Stanwyck with her hand on her hip in your throat. And I thought, okay, I get it.
Got it. Good reference point.
But, you know,
it's exquisite. I was so grateful to see it. The set design is stunning. It's all in this one, you know, the drawing room. And it was just, I mean, Frances Sternhagen, Philip
Franny.
Bosco, it was such a pleasure to sit down and watch this very well-made play unfold before me in your physical transformation as Catherine. It's just so incredible. And that last, you walking up the steps with the lamp. I mean, it really is. I feel so privileged to have been able to see it. So thank you, Judy.
I did go to see that, and I couldn't watch it. I thought, what the hell were people thinking? But I couldn't get through it.
It is excellent, and it's such a delight. I mean, for those of you who don't know, the Performing Arts Library is such a great resource if there's some production that you've never seen. I think they started taping in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. So it's just a great resource to see plays and performers that you love, and they're very receptive to letting people come and watch and spend the day there. It's just it's a really good way to spend an afternoon.
They probably have thousands at this point.
As I was walking out, I texted Damien because as I was walking out, I saw somebody watching Tyne Daly's Gypsy, and I just said, I love it here.
Yeah, we love New York.
I saw that live, and I saw Angela Lansbury.
Oh, Cherry. Let's just go there.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question. So we have a bit that like we talk about the same 10 things and like the same 20 topics and same 10 conversations. One of them is Gypsy. We love the show. We love the mythology, the Arthur Lawrence of it, the Sondheim, all of it. Have you ever considered or been pursued to play Madame Rose?
No, I don't sing.
It doesn't
But
matter.
like Tyne Daly doesn't sing like that.
She sings.
Yeah.
Tyne sings. And Angela sang.
Yes. No, I agree.
Yeah,
But
it helps
first and
if you
foremost, we
sing.
want an actor.
Yeah.
Because it is like the Macbeth of musical theater. And so I was like, I just saw the most recent production and I said, I think maybe we didn't even have this interview booked yet. And I said, has Cherry Jones ever done Gypsy?
No, I would give anything. That overture makes me cry.
Same.
It's incredible.
Sob at the opening.
Stunning.
And I haven't gotten to see Audrey yet, and I can't wait to go. But I will say this, because I mean, you know, it's the greatest final number of all times. And I remember when Angela did it, because it was my first, Angela would, and she was tall. You know, she was a tall woman. And
Yeah.
she was a tall woman.
Thank you.
And she spread out those arms, and I swear to God, during Rose's turn, it was literally like the roof of that ceiling was going boom, 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 like a lid on a pressure cooker that's not screwed on tight. Yeah. I've never seen anything like. I mean, you can actually see there's some parroted things that you can see on YouTube, which I can't talk about as an equity member.
I
know
totally
it's
understand.
complicated. It is but that is how I got to see Angela Lansbury's Rose's Turn, which is we sometimes watch them all back to back just to see all of the nuances between like Tyne's verse, Angela's verse, Patty's verse, Bernadette's, and it's like wow, you know?
Yeah.
There's this great footage of her. I don't know if it's like an American Masters, but they showed her that footage. And so it's side-by-side footage of her watching her B-roll footage from Rose's Turn. And it is magnificent to watch her reflect on her own work. It was, I mean, I remember.
Her for me's are very, they're
so
incredible.
Angry, so beautiful. I don't know. So happy you got to see her in it.
It was one of those, you know, moments that I knew as I was watching it, I couldn't imagine anything better. Yeah. And those hands, those huge hands.
Yes.
And I just remember, you know, and it was like watching her sing Nothing's Gonna Harm You. And I got to see her.
You saw Sweeney Todd.
And I just, and I was, when I saw Sweeney Todd, I was in the last row of the balcony. And I saw, because this was I was a freshman in college, and I came to New York and stayed with a friend on the Thanksgiving break and got to see it. I was in the back row, and I could see that on the front row center there was an empty seat. And I had to pee so badly, but you better believe I held it. And I got down to that seat during intermission and just plopped down, and I watched the second half of that show. And I just remember Angela Lansbury's gorgeous hands wrapping around that poor boy singing Nothing's Gonna Harm You. It was, oh God, just incredible. And I got to see Colleen Dewhurst do Moon for the Misbegotten. And before they came to New York, they were doing a workshop of it up in Lake Forest, I think Lake Forest, Illinois.
Oh my God.
And I talked to Jane Greenwood, the costume designer for the Heiress. She was also the costume designer for A Moon for the Misbegotten.
Oh, how cool.
And she said, when you saw it, they didn't even have on costumes. They were just in pieces that they had pulled for them to wear. And I just remember Colleen Dewhurst, the lights go up, and these big brown legs and hands, and she's scrubbing the top of the shack's steps. And I just remember as a 16-year-old sitting up in my seat and thinking, who is this? Someone that big, that bold, that powerful gets to be an actress? Because to me, still, actresses were not getting to do that kind of work, and they all had long red nails, you know?
Yeah.
So that really did change things.
Yeah, that
for me.
inspired. Did you ever get to meet her? Because like we loved that film production. It's so gorgeous. We also love her from the Anne of Green Gables films. She is a force. Like, did you ever get to meet her?
I came into a tavern one night after a show, and she was there with a bunch of actors at a table, and I came in, and I was briefly introduced, and I sat at the end of the table, and every once in a while she would look down at me, but that was the only contact. And when I did the Heiress, I thought, this is because everybody famous came backstage. Yeah. Everybody. It was so much better in person.
I know. I'm so sorry.
So I know of all the things. I'm like, oh, not the Heiress. No. But I mean, all these people would flock backstage. So I was meeting all of these people, and I thought, oh, now I'll get to really get to know Colleen. I'll just attach myself to her, and that's when she had become ill, and we didn't know it at the time. But I didn't get to meet her.
You were sharing with us before we were recording that you have a piece of Colleen Dewhurst on your wall. Would you just share that on the pod? Do you feel comfortable?
Oh, yeah. And if the gentleman by any chance who gave me that that card is listening, let Damien and Ann know, because I want to thank you. It's hung on dressing room walls. It's hung in my... This gentleman was walking down the street one day going past the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and there'd been a flood in the basement. And so they had garbage bags of all these files that had to be thrown out. And so being clearly a theater lover, he started going through the cards, and he found Colleen's student card, little file card with her age and her weight and her height.
5'7" and a half.
5'7" and a half. And this darling little, it looks like a passport photo.
Yeah.
It was stuck with yellowing tape on the, and it's a treasure. And I mentioned that Zoe Caldwell came backstage at Doubt, and I showed her the picture because they were great friends. And I said, so I know I should give this to Campbell. And she said, don't you dare. He has enough pictures of his mother. This is for you.
London?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, right. So you had mentioned that you just did a play. Obviously, you were majoed in The Grapes of Wrath in London. It was filmed. Is there any chance that this would transfer? Is this something that you're looking at potentially? No, it's just National Theater and done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's too big. It's 27 people,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
10 less than the great Mr. Galati had for his production.
Do you notice, you've worked in London a few times, you took the Glass Menagerie there, right? What would you
Those
say
are
is-
only 2 times.
Only those 2 times. So what would you say, based on those experiences, are the biggest differences between American and English audiences?
They listen in a different way.
Better, worse?
And I think better. And phones don't go off. And
God.
you don't hear, even though I'm sure they drink in the theaters, but I made a pact at the booth. I said, no ice. If they're going to bring their sippy cups in, no ice. Because there's nothing like being in the middle of something and hearing hard ice on hard plastic.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just the worst. But nowadays, I went to see, and I loved it, The Doll's House that Jessica Chastain did. And when it began, before the curtain, she's sitting in a chair on a huge turntable, turning towards us and away from us, and just sitting in this chair for like 15 minutes. And every person in the audience was filming it. Everyone. And no one was telling them not to. And I was just, I was in a rage.
Yeah.
And then I realized what they did. It was actually smart. Once the acting began, they all put down their phones, and no phones came back up. They got it out of their system.
Okay.
And then,
Maybe it was a tactic to avoid filming during the actual show.
I honestly think it was.
That's smart.
They'd gotten what they wanted.
Right.
Close-ups of Jessica Chastain going around in a circle, and they could...
It reminds me of, I saw, what was the Fiona Shaw show? The Testament of
Mary.
Mary.
Yes, that's right, I think.
She was on stage for like a full hour. Before on stage in a glass box. I don't remember if she was naked then or if she got naked over the course of the show, but the audience was invited up. And this was on Broadway, which was interesting.
Yeah.
It felt much more like a downtown choice.
Yeah.
But the whole audience got to go on stage and circle the stage, and there was like taxidermied animals and Fiona Shaw in a glass box. It was just very interesting. But you weren't allowed to have phones, and I appreciated that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you lost your phone in the theater.
Then
that
I lost
night.
my phone in the theater. Is there anybody, because we're going to pivot in a second to non-theatrical things, but you're talking about Angela Lansbury, Colleen Dewhurst. Is there anyone that's living that you drop everything to see, regardless if you think the material is bad or you're like, I don't like that director, but you'll be like, I will see this person in anything on stage, period.
Well, one person that I just saw yesterday who is in that cadre is, that's the right word, cadre, is Jessica Hecht.
Oh, we love her.
She's the best.
I love some Jessica Hecht.
Eureka Day.
Yeah.
She was so good at it. She's so
good.
funny.
Did you see Summer of 1974?
No, I missed it, and I heard it was
my
incredible.
God.
I didn't see
I
the
heard she was
Laura,
so good.
Lenny, and Jessica, they were just unbelievable. I also am a big J. Smith Cameron fan.
Yeah.
I would love to see
She needs to
her
come
in
back.
anything she does. It's that awful thing when you ask that question. It's like I should just. I can't.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, you have a laundry list. There's so many, right?
So
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
amazing.
We'll get to Jessica
This
Heck
is-
later, actually.
Yeah.
There's just so much talent in the world. You just get bowled over thinking about all these people who exist and walk.
And I feel
in the
like,
world.
I always say, obviously, there's lots of places where great theater is happening, period. It doesn't, it's not New York centric. But for me, the reason that despite the high cost of everything and some of the horrors of living in New York, it's like every good actor will come through New York City at some point to do something. And the influx of the talent and the variety of talent here is so incredible.
And so often those actors who come here, who don't live here or aren't from here, just fall in love with New York.
Yeah, it's the best.
So, Cherry, you appear in M. Night Shyamalan's Signs about an alien invasion, and then also The Village about a remote village where the inhabitants are like scared of these unnamed monsters. Yeah. So, how much of like the signature Shyamalan twist were you privy to when you signed up for those films? And do you and him have like any sort of rapport since you've worked with him multiple times?
Well, I worked with him twice in the early 2000s. So no, I haven't seen.
I didn't know if it was like you guys had a thing,
And
that's
he was like,
why
"Get me
brought you
Cherry
back."
Jones."
No, but he did love sort of having rep companies, and that's why I got to go from Signs
Yeah.
to The Village. But he did the greatest thing before The Village, and it was such a fun group of people. I mean, and he took us all to Girl Scout camp in the Pines in New Jersey. And the pines, it was sand and pines. And it was a full moon. So at night, the week we were there, because of the sand, it was like daylight all the time. But it was freaking cold. It was in October. And the first night we were there, it got below freezing. And he wanted us to learn how to live the old ways.
Yeah.
So we'd have to build fires, and we had cauldrons, and we had hot water bottles, and we had really good sleeping bags. But we were sleeping outside in these platform tents, Girl Scout tents, and we had, we all wore hats on our heads and gloves, but by day it warmed up, and we would be canoeing. The men would be out learning how to plow with a horse, and we'd be gathering foraging in the forest and making baskets. But at lunch break, Joaquin Phoenix is a vegan, so we would have these incredible vegan meals. I think maybe there was some meat that was, I can't actually remember whether it was just all vegan or not, but we would all, and we wore our 19th century clothes all the time.
Yeah.
And we never changed into civilian clothes. But at lunchtime, he would have people come in and lecture about communes, about utopian societies.
Interesting.
And there was a woman from Tennessee who'd grown up at this hippie camp in Tennessee her entire life.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And she was a young doctor, and she'd studied with one of my mother's students who became a doctor. It was just, the coincidence of life, but it was so much fun. And Brendan Gleeson and I were in a canoe, and we tipped it over, and in our 19th century clothes, and so we got to wear our civilian clothes just long enough to dry off our.
I believe Celia Weston told us like she loved like doing all the crafts and things, but she was like, I'm not sure that it really informed my work at all. Did you feel like did you feel like it informed your work, or was it just like fun?
You know what? It was like fun, but what it did was it brought us really close together as a group, because it was a large group of actors, and so we really got to hang out and have fun together. Yeah.
So you also appear in the 2011 Jodie Foster directed film The Beaver, starring your Signs co-star Mel Gibson. How did this role come to be? Was it because of Jodie, because of Lesbian Hollywood, or was it from Mel and Signs?
I'm sure it was not from Mel and Signs, but it was. She asked me, and I.
You get to play sort of like the head of this toy company, and
Is that what it was?
I think that's what it was, because then it's like he is having a
the
mental
beaver.
the beaver on a
Yes,
hand. Anyway,
right.
it's a very strange film. Was it a wild shoot doing work with Mel Gibson with a beaver on his hand?
One would think so. I think he had it outside. We were shooting outside Rockefeller Center, and that was that was particularly because the crowds grew to see Mel Gibson running around with a beaver puppet in his hand. No, but Jodie Foster really knows what she wants, and she works very quickly because she's done it a few times.
Love her.
Yeah. So we're both queer, and we're of course thrilled that like one of the big pieces of Cherry Jones' history is of course that when you won both of your Tonys, you thanked each of your partners at the time. You grew up in a small town, Paris, Tennessee, and you've said obviously you were extremely close with your parents. It seems like you were publicly out of the closet when you started your career in the 80s. At any point, did you feel any industry pressure, whether direct or indirect, to stay closeted when you were starting out in the business? Or maybe when your star was rising?
No.
None. That's great.
And the other thing is, I wasn't doing television and film in those days. I was doing theater, and as I like to say, theater is rife with homosexuals. You know, so
Thank God.
it was.
Yeah.
I was home.
Yeah.
And nobody cared.
Yeah.
And half the directors I worked with were gay.
Right,
You know.
right.
And as long as you can pass, as Catherine Sloper,
Right,
you know, and you're
right.
gay. So it was that was never a problem for me.
That's
ever.
great.
I will say that during the Heiress, it was the first time I was interviewed nationally, and my partner's mother did not know that we were together. And I remember it was a wonderful woman from, I can't remember, but
Okay.
it was something that was going to be picked up.
Sure.
And this woman started asking me about my personal life, and she said, "Are you in a relationship?" And I thought, here we go. It was like she had a neon sign over her head going,
Yeah.
here we go. And I said yes, and I said Mary's name, and fortunately, Mrs. O'Connor did not find out about it at that point.
Right.
I don't think she lived with us and later on. Yeah.
You know, Anne and I, as we have developed our friendship as adults over the last 15-ish years, like we bonded over being young theater kids who were gay, not knowing it maybe, and like being cast as like sexless or old or crazy or some
The funny one.
Yes,
Yeah.
always.
and some combination of those things. Like, how did your sexuality inform you as a young artist, if at all, like in your work?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It made it really easy with your leading men. I remember I was doing Twelfth Night. Diane Lane was playing Olivia because the gal who was supposed to play Olivia had to drop out. And Andre Serban, who taught me more than anyone in this business did, had cast Diane Lane in Trojan Women at La Mama when she was 6. And she traveled all over Europe with that group without her parents.
Oh, my
and
God.
she's got the most amazing life in the world, Diane. But so the guy playing Orsino, it was so great because I would always tell my leading men immediately, if they didn't know, that I was gay. And so you could have these wonderful, easy love scenes because his girlfriend wasn't jealous, and so you could really go to these places with heterosexual men as a gay woman and it's fun to be heterosexual occasionally. I mean, it was fun.
You're getting to play.
I got to play heterosexual, and but most of the parts that I played were women who were not married, which was so fantastic. I mean, they were the heroines.
Yeah.
And when you're married, it usually the whole play is about trying to get out of the marriage, which after a while gets a little boring.
100%.
For me.
Yeah.
So when you get to play heroines, the sky's the limit, and you have total freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the great credits we came across was this 2001 Lifetime movie that you did with Brooke Shields.
Oh.
What Makes a Family, where you guys play a lesbian couple, you have a daughter together, you get sick, spoiler alert, and die from lupus-related causes. But the movie is sort of like a custody battle as she doesn't have legal rights to
And
get
it's a
your
true
kid.
story.
Yes. And it was 2001, I think I said, and we found out that it was also produced by Barbara Streisand.
Mm-hmm. She was one of the producers.
Love this. I think she maybe even mentioned in her book, which we read last year. But how did the project come to you, and how would you rate Brooke as a lesbian?
damn good.
Yeah.
It really, and it was so funny because they always do this. I hear. I mean, I haven't played that many kissy woo scenes, but the very first scene was in this.
Like supermarket?
No. It wasn't the supermarket. It was the community church gay and lesbian dance.
Yeah.
And we were gonna. That's where I take her for our first big date.
Yeah.
And we actually kiss on the dance floor while we're dancing. The dancing was more of a challenge for me than the kissing.
You had you did like a little samba step. I saw it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it was
They
good.
cost me everything I had to be able to do that in a believable way, like I'd never moved before. I'm not a big dancer.
You were in a tap dancing play, though.
I was, but it's another reason why I couldn't do Gypsy. I'm not a hoofer. But before we did that scene, two things happened. One, Brooke sent her driver to get a little pint of Jack Daniels or something, and we sat in her trailer.
Yeah.
And we drank Jack Daniels and talked because we hadn't really met before. And then I went to put on my costume, and they must have gotten it from Goodwill because it
Smelled.
reeked of somebody else's everything. And this was the flannel shirt, of course it was a flannel
Right.
shirt, that I was
So inspired.
going to be wearing while
Yeah.
kissing Brooke Shields. And I thought, oh, this is bad. So I ran to the wardrobe department. I said, ladies, I know you don't have time to wash this because we were just about to. And I said, can you think of anything? So they threw it in the dryer with some Febreze strips. So in the end, I shouldn't even talk about a spoiler alert. I'm dancing and kissing Brooke Shields in a shirt that could have walked by itself. It was, oh my God, it was just foul. But she loved me anyway.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
It really is so sweet.
Story.
It really is incredible. Whoopi Goldberg is in it too, and it's available to watch on Tubi, which is great. I recommend it, and we have a soft spot for Brooke Shields, who I think also is like a woman who's come back to the theater multiple times,
Yeah.
which I really love
Yes.
about her.
Yes.
She was really
Multiple
good
times.
in Wonderful Town.
Yeah.
She was a really great replacement for Donna Murphy. I was surprised.
Yeah. She always is so surprising, Brooke. And I
Yeah.
thought she was beautiful in our little film. I thought
Yes.
she was so fantastic. And I will say that when the judge ruled and gave Janine, the actual woman, that child, they had that child in, I think, 1979 or something, or 78, and it was at the height of Anita Bryant, and the judge in Dade County, Florida, recognized that woman was the mother of that child, and awarded her custody.
That's beautiful.
But for 5 years, she didn't have that child.
It's insane.
And I got to meet them, and the daughter was going to vet school and adored her mother, and it was just wonderful.
Also, it feels like when you look back at that time period, there was like, Will and Grace was after that, and some sort of like, gay pop culture-y things happening, but there still really was like no kissing on Will and Grace. So honestly, for a Lifetime movie that did have physical contact, like a lot of times in gay movies or TV shows, there would be like a really long hug. Then that's the best we would get.
you always
or
say,
like
hand
lesbians love to hold hands on TV because they couldn't, like, God forbid,
Do
you show
anything
anything actually
yeah.
sexy. It would just be like lesbians love to touch hands. So honestly, I was really pleasantly surprised to be like, okay, this is from 2001, and honestly, they're showing actual physical affection, which was a big deal.
And the director said, if people don't buy that you all are madly in love and devoted to one another, this is never going to work.
Yeah.
So I need to see that chemistry. And Neil Marin and Craig Zaden were the producers
Love, yeah.
on that. And they said that they searched and searched and searched for a story about a couple with a child that's taken away. And they wanted the story where the child at the end is given to the mother. And they searched forever. They couldn't find one case where at the end the gay parent had been given the child, and finally they found that story, and because they wanted it to be positive.
Thank
I
God,
like
right? There's
that.
so many
Yeah.
queer tragic stories that we
Exactly.
had to suffer
Oh,
through
God.
forever.
Yeah, like growing up, like with like Brian White and like Matthew Shepard stories being
Yeah.
the stories
Well,
that are
or
like.
for me, the children's hour.
Oh my
whatever,
God,
you know,
right.
I
it's
actually
like-
just watched. Wait, who did we? Are we Veronica Cartwright as a
Veronica
child
Cartwright, yeah.
actor in that? And I had never seen it. I was blown. I was like, this is wild.
Yeah, pretty depressing.
Really depressing. Okay, Cherry Jones, we have entered the part of the show that we call the rapid fire. It's rapid for Ann and I. We're going to throw a lot at you, but you don't have to feel rushed. You can take your time. We're not, it's not rapid for you. Okay, Cherry. As mentioned, Jessica Hecht, former guest of this show, she told us that it's very in vogue right now to use fake teeth to find your character. You played Eleanor Roosevelt opposite Hilary Swank's Amelia Earhart in Amelia, and we're fairly certain that you maybe have dental prosthetics on to play Eleanor Roosevelt. Tell us everything.
I do indeed. I do indeed. I may still have those teeth in there. Yeah. No, you do need teeth for Eleanor because they were
Yeah.
so distinct, and the way they made her mouth and the prosthetics I had to have.
They gave you something on your cheeks here, right?
Well, it was from my below my eyes, all the way down to my chest.
Yeah.
That was only, and I had prosthetics for What Makes a Family because of the lupus.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And in fact,
not in the early scenes. Yes.
In fact, I went through menopause really early, and I think it's because of Pride's Crossing, because I was playing a 90-year-old and going back and forth.
Okay.
That really is. You all should go to the library and
I
see
know.
that.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Such
we will
Jack
do that.
O'Brien directed.
Okay.
It's so good. And Tina Howe. But I had started going through menopause, so I was having just terrible sweats. And it was summertime in Toronto where we were filming What Makes a Family, and I had this heavy prosthetics, and they would put me on a couch in the basement of this house with one of those huge yellow tubes where they pipe in air conditioning. So on lunch, I would just go sit on a just with that
With your prosthetics
to
on.
try to keep my prosthetics on because I was sweating so much.
Did you find that they were helpful, or it was more of a hindrance? Like, did it help? You felt like it really got
like
you
the
there.
Teeth.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to talk. Is that hard? You have to learn.
That was a one-day job. I don't really remember that job very well.
You're holding the steering wheel flying a plane.
Oh, that's right. I
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
You're having a
Yes.
little
that's right.
flirtation with Amelia.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure those teeth helped with. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Cherry, despite being only 14 years older than him, you play Matt Damon's, spoiler alert, mother in Ocean's 12. What the fuck is wrong with this industry?
Well, I think Angela Lansbury played Lawrence Harvey's
Yeah.
mother in The
Yeah.
Manchurian Candidate,
Yeah.
and I think she was 2 years either older or younger than him. I will say that was I did think,
Right.
but I got to go to Rome.
Yeah.
That
It is a good scene. It's a
that
very
was-
fun scene.
That was the first time I got to go someplace exotic. For Aaron Brockovich, it was just Borax, California.
Okay. We got to set the record straight here because one early interview we found states that you had a small role in, of course, the Penny Marshall classic A League of Their Own. Is this true? If so, what a gay dream come true. Can you tell us what happened?
There were two movies that I was in, On Cold Mountain and A League of Our Own, that I was not in.
Okay.
Oh, it says you were in them, but
Yes.
you never. It wasn't like you were.
I've done recordings for Random House. I did years ago. I
Yeah.
did the whole Little House on the Prairie series, and and every time it would come out, it would say On Cold. That would be
Yeah.
one. And I would write them. I'd call them. I'd say, "Yo, I really wasn't in that movie."
Well, we've set
No,
the
it was
record straight. Hopefully, this will clear up any rumors. I was hoping that you were like on a team and we just didn't see you, or a line was cut or something.
Yeah, no. And in fact, the first time I ever heard, I think maybe I was asked to audition for it, but I couldn't. I don't know why. But I remember I've always heard things a little differently, and I remember I kept saying, "Now, what's this movie, A Vida Vion?" I thought that was the name of the movie. A Vida Vion.
A Vida Vion.
A Vida Vion.
That's elegant.
Do you have to speak another language to be in A Vida Vion?
Damien, while we're on this, I feel like we have to plug it because our listener, Sarah, wanted to make sure that we asked you about the audiobooks of Little House on the Prairie.
Oh.
Did you have to audition for that? Did that get pushed to you? And what do you feel like? Do you feel like you would be a person that could survive on the frontier? Like, do you need...
Shyamalan prepared you. Maybe you could.
Right.
I would definitely be the brawn in any situation like that, and all the smart women would be baking the bread and making the biscuits, and I'd say,
Can you chop wood?
I can do.
Okay.
I can do the brawny stuff.
That's good.
But I like to think one could make it on the plains, but I don't know how any of them did or why they did.
It's like why they died at 24.
Yeah.
Did you grow up reading the books?
No, I grew up in the top of a tree. I'm a bad reader. And that's why podcasts have changed my life. And Audible.
You do audiobooks?
Yeah. Because I really am a poor reader. My eyes cross, and I love to be told a story.
Yeah.
So, I did just recently listen to Claire Danes reading Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
Nice.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe
really, really
because
good.
I never read the book, and I was like, the moment has passed. Maybe...
Oh,
And
no.
No, we're
it
in
has-
it. We're unfortunately in it.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I feel like it's too similar to the real life, but maybe I would like to listen to it. I'm going to take that as a recommendation.
You definitely should. And there is a moment when the women go before June has before it's gotten bad. She goes to use her credit card, and it keeps coming up invalid. And it's because on a day they canceled all the cards owned by women, and so that now they can't go anywhere, they can't do anything, they have no money. Even if they had money, they have no money. And and here we are today. They're asking permission to go into the IRS and to a deep dive with names, Social Security, all those records, and we have no idea who those 23-year-olds are, what they're up to. I don't think Musk knows what they're up to.
No, at all.
I mean,
No.
and this country just they're going to miss their bureaucrats more than they could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, and all the people who are getting so excited because they're going to get rich. And the people with money will get rich. I think maybe they won't.
Right.
But most people have no idea what's about to happen with the dysfunction that's about to become apparent.
Yeah. When we reached out to you for this interview, you had mentioned that you had seen our Legie episode that we had talked about Eva Legalian. You said you had stories from your theater friends. Anything you can share about Legie?
Well, you know what? Not the only one that was actually unflattering, so I almost don't even want to.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can tell us off the record.
Julie Heiress thought she was a little too guru-y.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so she had trouble with that. But
That's true of theater teachers and some teachers in general. Anyway.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
a cult of personality around someone that gets
I think
built.
that's,
Okay.
But I would love to have met her. And
Yeah,
known her.
we're so grateful we learned about her from Kate Burton, and then it opened up our whole world.
Yeah, and then Barry Kreinick, who wrote
Yeah.
that play and did the audiobook about her, did all of this deep dive. It was really great.
No, I so enjoyed that episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much thank you for doing your research, because not everybody does, so we appreciate it.
You knew what you were signing up for when we came over.
Okay. We're going to get into Transparent, where you essentially played famous lesbian poet and writer Eileen Myles. Joey Soloway's partner at the time was Eileen. So, it was kind of known that, yes, you're kind of basically playing Eileen Myles.
Oh, yeah, that was
clear. This is one of my favorite things you've done, because it felt so different than what we've seen you do. Can you tell us how you found that Eileen Myles swagger, which is so particular, since you had to seduce your TA, Gabby Hoffman, on the show, I think, who's much your junior?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the boots helped. They gave me a great pair of motorcycle boots that disappeared between the second season and the third season. I was very sad about that. But that swagger, I just never gotten to do that before.
Yeah.
And I kept I'd get red in the face sometimes because I felt, shy about it. Because I always thought, I was a tomboy, and I always thought I was not a more masculine, butch lesbian, but, not that wussy, and then, but when I got on that set, and I thought, oh no, this requires something else. I've got to really, really butch up, and it was so much fun, and my wife loved it.
It was really fun. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this next one is for you.
Okay, we're powering through. We promise we're going to get out of your hair. Your first IMDb credit is as a secretary in the TV pilot O'Malley, starring none other than Mickey Rooney as an Irish detective. Couldn't find it anywhere, but we were excited to see that you worked with him. We're going to call him a notorious legend. Do you have any stories about Mickey Rooney?
I don't think I was in that one either.
Oh my God, what the fuck? All right, well, we got to correct the record on IMDb.
Maybe
It says you were a
but you didn't film
secretary.
with him. We couldn't find it, so
Maybe.
It seems like it
There
was a TV
something-
pilot. It's called a TV movie, and Damien informed me that's when a TV pilot didn't go to series.
Sometimes,
That's how it's
yeah.
listed on IMDb.
Yeah. Because I really don't remember.
You
that
don't
one.
remember Mr. Rooney?
No.
Okay.
And I think I would have.
Yeah, that's what we've heard. That's what we've heard.
Okay. I think Cherry
Yeah.
Jones' last question, and it's a really important one. You have been one of the most visible and vocal lesbian actors of our generation. Why the fuck weren't you on our favorite show, The L Word?
Because I was doing plays.
They asked you to be on it, right?
No, I know.
What the-
Well, that was so LA centric.
so LA.
and that was way out of the world that I knew. I that would not have been my.
Did you watch it?
No,
Any interest in ever seeing it?
not really.
Okay.
I have the box set, the entire series.
It is
It's
not
but
good.
it's
but
so
it is good, but not good.
Yeah, it's
And
not
it's-
good, but it's good.
It's so LA.
Yes.
Yes.
And that doesn't interest me so much.
God bless you. Thank God you've stayed in New York. It's really, it is a blessing
Yes,
that
yes.
you are a New York actor and you are for us. Cherry Jones, can't even say enough. Thank you for having us in your home. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your energy today.
Well, thank you for schlepping down to see me.
Please, what a pleasure.
Same. And I can't wait to grow older listening to your podcast because, you're going to introduce me to so many people I don't know.
What a joy it was to get to sit down in Cherry Jones' home. Honestly, I have to share a secret. It was my birthday. It was my legit birthday when we
Yeah.
sat in Cherry's home. And it was so lovely. I had, you might notice that I was a little under the weather because I was screaming so much the night prior. But it was a real joy. She served us tea and she showed us her theater memorabilia, as Anne said. And we talked about, she had, a letter from Lorette Taylor. And I remember, thinking in the moment, but wasn't certain, and I couldn't pick the pieces together. But we had already talked to her about Legee a little bit, in email correspondence.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, there was some, rumor about, Lorette Taylor and Legee that we talk about with Barry Kreinick in our special episode that's, part of it is up on the main feed, and then you can listen to the full thing on the Patreon. But... Lorette Taylor, who was the original Amanda in the Glass Menagerie, she was a very eccentric actress. Noel Coward wrote Hay Fever, and there is I don't know, theories and conjecture and things that suggest that maybe that kooky character is based on Lorette Taylor, and apparently she was very insulted, but she and Noel Coward were very close, and she was apparently kooky. Anyway, there were rumors that she and Legee had some sort of lesbian dalliance, which Barry Kreinick, for the record, did say there is no proof of, and that it's just fan theories, or I don't know if that's a fan. I think it's just kooky.
They were lesbians around the same time, potentially. Lorette Taylor was probably...
But I don't know
Well, I
that
guess
Lorette Taylor was a lesbian, so I think the
You're
rumor
right.
was that maybe Legee turned her out, or they worked together and that they slept together.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's anything to support that it's true.
Yes.
But all of that said, it was just so cool being in Cherry's home and talking about Lorette Taylor, obviously because they both played Amanda, and then seeing the Colleen Dewhurst piece because we love Colleen Dewhurst and she's come up on this podcast so much, and how generous Cherry was to share what she did, including the moment before, as actors say, from her in doubt, the
Yeah.
moment before that she had created before the show starts. I just love that, and I love actor secrets, and I think that it's so interesting that I had never heard, I don't think, the expression actor secret as a young person who was trying to be an actor or did theater. And I remember one time I was walking down the street with my friend Brantley, and he had sides for an audition he had, and maybe we were walking down the street, but maybe I saw his sides at some point, and it was about a friend dying or something, I forget. But in the margins of his sides, there was something that was comparing the person who he was talking about, the dead person, to it was imagine if Damien wasn't here, what didn't do that thing. When we walk on the street when we were younger, I used to be and I used to do that in tourist faces in Midtown and in Hell's Kitchen and Times Square. And he was imagine Damien was no longer here and didn't do that thing where he makes weird noises in strangers' faces. And I was like, oh my God, I saw that sweet thing. And he was like, you're not supposed to see that. That's like an actor's secret. And I loved that, like learning that was like, you know, everyone has different parts, but like, I love the process.
Yeah.
So getting someone like Cherry Jones, a 2-time Tony winner, a 3-time Emmy winner, as you said, theater royalty, New York royalty, to reveal such a, I think like a really personal secret. I mean, at a certain point I was just listening and I was like, oh yeah, this is the play. And then I was like, oh, none of it's real.
Exactly.
Like, it felt so...
I had the same moment where you saw her sort of go somewhere else, and I was like, oh, this was like something that was crafted in the performance live. And then I was like, this is her recounting what she imagined for herself as she was going into this scene. How generous. I like you said, it's rare that actors reveal those pieces. And also she said, you know, she's not usually an actor. She's not usually the kind of actor that talks about her craft, because I feel like there maybe is something, maybe she didn't want to share it with us, but also maybe there is something sort of effortless about what she does, which for me is the magic of the podcast, because you and I are still, after all these years of talking to so many actors and hearing their secrets, their craft, how they work, if they're bullshitting, if they prepare, if they don't prepare, there's something still really magical to me about witnessing a performance that sort of takes your breath away, because at the end of the day, it still feels to me, despite everything that we know and that we've learned, it still feels like magic. And so getting a peek behind the curtain with Cherry Jones felt it felt so special.
Completely. And just like one of the things that's like so magical about this podcast is getting those stories, because I feel like whether someone is so personal about their process with us and shares like Cherry did, or whether they're like admit like I just rolled in and shot from the hip, I don't think that one makes you better and one makes you worse. I think you can be great and do both or neither. I also think you can be bad and do both and neither.
Yeah.
So like but I love that, like getting to hear those stories and getting to some actors being like, I don't do warm-ups anymore. Some actors being like, no, I didn't write a backstory. I had 4 lines. Because that feels real. It's a job, right? And sometimes you're just like, I need to go do this to keep my health insurance. But then other times you're like, I'm bringing a character to life that has like, you know, how many people have played this character before? I need to make this my own, and I need to like dig deep. So, what a joy, what a pleasure. I love Cherry Jones. I loved getting to do that interview with you. I love you. I love this podcast, and I love you all for listening. Please, 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 for the love of God, if you believe in Him, and if you don't, then for the love of someone dead that you love.
If you believe in them, if you believe in God, plural, singular, non-gendered,
leave us a written review on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcast. I know that there is a dog chewing behind us, but guys, we're just doing the best we can. So please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. And while you're at it, the best way you can support us, help us continue to keep doing this thing, and hopefully one day no longer have a dog in the quote unquote studio, if you will. Subscribe to our Patreon. You can find that at patreon.com/YouMightKnowHerFrom.
If you're looking for that syllabus, you're going to find it in the show notes. I put them at the bottom of each episode in the episode description. We love you so much. We love Ronald the intern. Find us on Patreon. We'll see you next time. I have something to say that's not about a woman. I know that you tease me about it all the time, that I bring up men too many times.
Okay, here we go. It's about Chris. She's gonna get 12 minutes on Chris Farley.
No. But I do have love for Chris Farley, but it's not about him. I was very charmed. I don't know if you got to see any of the SAG Awards last night. They were boring and very long and like not good. And I felt like because of the LA fires, which I totally understand, the tone was very somber and like not funny. And Kristen Bell is like, I think, a charming person, but I didn't think was a great host. The thing that I saw at the very end was that Timothée Chalamet won Best Actor for A Complete Unknown, which I feel fine about. But I was actually very charmed by his speech, and I didn't know if you had heard it. Or he basically said, I know it's not cool to say this, but I'm inspired by the greats like Brando and somebody else, and Viola Davis and Michael Jordan and somebody else. Like, I'm inspired by the greats, and I want to be one of the greats. And that's just like, you know, fuel to the fire. I know this doesn't mean anything, but it's like, it gives me the strength to keep on going. So thank you so much. This means the world. I was very charmed by his transparency and like how much he wants it, because I feel like so much of those award shows is people like, I'm really over Kieran Culkin right now, like pretending like he doesn't give a fuck about anything. And I'm like, I get it. And you've been in the business since you were 4 and you're probably traumatized. But I found it very charming that Timothée Chalamet, who is like maybe one of the biggest movie stars at this point, like did Bob Dylan for 5 years, like worked on that project for 5 years. And I thought he was quite good in it, though the movie was kind of stupid, I thought. I was charmed by him just completely owning up to the fact that I work really hard at this. I really want to do it for the rest of my life, and I want to be good, and I like really appreciate the award. What do you think about that attitude?
I think that it's interesting because I think, well, one, I wonder if the pendulum will swing in his favor or go further, or like go the other
Totally.
way. And
Because I thought Adrian Brody was going to get it.
and also if people feel differently because he's a like if you
Totally.
feel it, because I feel like Anne Hathaway also owned that.
I
and
was just
she was
gonna
sort of
bring
like,
that up.
I'm a theater kid and I want this, and it came true, and people were like, you need to disappear for like years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was thinking about that as I was complimenting Chalamet and like what gets lost when it's a woman doing it and what's irritating. I do think that the way that he stated it plainly was more charming than like saying, and again, maybe this is misogyny, maybe this is my own self-hatred, but like I also still don't love Sally Field being like, you like me, you really like me. Like I found that to be an irritating response to like winning an award, or her saying like it came true, which is like sweet in a way, but also I don't think it's the same as like I worked really hard for this and I know it's not cool to admit, but like I wanted this.
But I think what is interesting is like I do like that sort of transparency, like bringing it all back to Sunset Boulevard. Like one of the things I always found annoying was like Nicole Scherzinger, that like she went to school for musical theater, and for many years that was like hidden. And like when she did stuff for like Andrew Lloyd Webber, you know, when she was singing Evita or she was singing Phantom of the Opera, that it was always like, oh, like I don't know this show, or like, oh, like I don't do this.
Yeah.
And then like now she's on Sunset Boulevard and she's wonderful, but like whether she's like a trained actor, I don't know, but like she did train to be a singer and dancer and like did go to school for it. Whether it will serve Timothy, I guess we'll find out.